When a silent biker stood up for a waiter everyone had learned to ignore, no one expected it would shake the whole town. What seemed like a simple act became a challenge to prejudice, and one forgotten lighter sparked a story people still whisper about. Matt had worked the same diner counter for nearly 7 years, long enough to know how people looked through you when they didn't want to see who you were. His presence never stirred conversation, only silence, the kind that settles not because of peace, but discomfort. Customers smiled at the door, laughed at their tables, and barely made eye contact when he brought their food. To them, he wasn't rude or strange, just invisible. Polite, quiet, forgettable. And that was safer, usually. In a town where everyone knew everyone else's business, being noticed was often the first step to being targeted. But that Tuesday, that was the day everything cracked. The bell above the door rang, sharp, clear, and for a split second, the room seemed to hold its breath. A man stepped in, tall, built like he didn't flinch from anything, with a kind of weight to his presence that turned heads without meaning to. Behind him, a woman followed. Her voice preceded her, tossing a laugh that didn't belong in this place. It had sharp edges. Matt had seen all kinds pass through town. Road-weary travelers, loudmouths, the regulars who loved to hear themselves talk. But this pair? Different. They walked like they didn't care how small this town was, like they expected the world to make room. He grabbed 2 menus, walked over. He could feel the eyes on him, not just theirs but the whole room's. Some waiting for a slip-up, some hoping for drama. The woman's stare swept across the room, bored, already unimpressed. "Can we at least pretend this place has real coffee?" she said, her voice like varnish over a sneer. Matt kept his tone steady. "Fresh brew. Strong. Best in town." She smirked, barely glancing at him. "Best in a dump like this? You sure they don't hire just anyone?" The words didn't sting like they used to. That didn't mean they didn't land. He stood a little taller, not reacting, already preparing to walk away and forget it like always. But before he could turn, the man's hand snapped the menu closed. "That's enough." His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Every word carried weight. The woman blinked. "Excuse me." He looked straight at her. "You heard me. Don't talk to him like that." The diner went still. Matt didn't know what surprised him more, the fact that someone had spoken up, or the way the man said it like it was just fact. Like respect was the bare minimum. The woman's mouth tightened. She stood abruptly. "If you're going to embarrass me for a stranger, then enjoy your lunch." Alone, she stormed out, heels tapping like punctuation marks. The man didn't follow immediately. He exhaled, slow and deliberate, rubbed a hand over his jaw, and stood up. As he walked toward the door, he paused just a beat, eyes meeting Matt's. No nod, no smile, but something passed between them. Then he was gone. The bell rang again. The air shifted. Conversations resumed, quieter than before. Some amused, others tense. Matt stood frozen for a second, then turned back toward the counter. His hands were steady. His pulse wasn't. It wasn't the first time someone had said something cruel. It was the first time someone had told him to stop. He tried to shake it off, get back to work. But later, while cleaning the booth they'd sat at, something caught his eye beneath the salt shaker. A lighter. Not new. Silver, scuffed. The kind that had seen years of use. Engraved across the side. Ride free. He picked it up gently. It was heavier than it looked. Worn, but clearly cared for. Matt stared at it for a moment, turning it in his palm. People like that didn't forget things by accident. This wasn't a dropped receipt. This was something that had meaning. Something worth returning for. And for the first time in a long time, Matt felt something he hadn't dared feel in years. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, someone might see him. Hope that maybe the story wasn't over. Not yet. The engine coughed once, then died with a dull final click. John sat still for a second, staring at the silent machine beneath him. He tried the ignition again. Nothing. Just the sound of failure and the cold air wrapping around his thoughts. He swung off the bike and cursed under his breath. The drizzle had stopped, but the pavement was still slick, shining faintly under the streetlights. The town was falling into its usual early silence. Stores closed. Sidewalks empty. A place where nothing unexpected ever happened. Until now. He leaned against the bike, jaw clenched, unsure whether the stalled engine or the memory of Sophia's voice annoyed him more. She was already long gone, swept off in a stranger's car with a laugh that didn't belong to anything real. He hadn't stopped her, didn't even consider it. Behind him, the diner door creaked. Footsteps, light, cautious. John turned. The waiter, Matt, stepped outside, wiping his hands on a cloth he shoved into his apron pocket. He stopped a few feet away, eyeing the motorcycle. "You all right?" Matt asked. "Stalled," John muttered. Matt took a breath. "Mind if I take a look?" John hesitated. Most people wouldn't offer. Fewer would mean it. "You know engines?" "Used to fix them with my uncle. Haven't forgotten how." There was no bravado in his voice, just something calm. "Solid." Matt crouched beside the Harley, tracing his fingers along the cables and bolts. His movements were quiet, efficient. He didn't talk, didn't try to fill the silence. Just worked. John stood to the side, arms folded, the wind brushing past both of them. A street lamp flickered. The smell of wet metal and fuel lingered in the air. The sound of the town was reduced to one humming transformer and a dog barking faintly down the block. "Try it," Matt said after a few minutes. John swung his leg back over, turned the key, and hit the ignition. The engine roared. Smooth. Alive again. He turned it off immediately, stunned more by the fact that Matt had fixed it than by the breakdown itself. Matt stood, brushing off his hands. John looked at him, then reached for something in his inner pocket. But before he could speak, Matt reached into his apron and pulled out the silver lighter. "You left this," he said, holding it out. John froze. That lighter had been with him for over a decade. A gift from a brother who rode before him. The words "Ride Free" were engraved into the metal, faded but clear. He took it carefully, turning it in his palm. "Didn't think I'd see this again." "I figured you'd come back," Matt said. John looked at him, really looked. No judgment, no expectations, just someone who noticed the small things. He pulled out a pen and scribbled his number on a napkin that had been tucked under his glove. "If you ever need something," he said, offering the napkin, "call me." Matt took it slowly, folded it, and slipped it into the front pocket of his apron. Like it was nothing, like it was everything. John swung back onto the bike, but didn't start it yet. "Thanks," he said. Matt nodded once. "You're welcome." They didn't smile, didn't linger on the moment too long. But something shifted. John finally kicked the bike into gear. The headlight lit up the road, and the engine rumbled back to life like nothing had ever gone wrong. As he pulled away, he caught a glimpse of Matt standing still, hand resting near his pocket where the napkin now lived. A soft warmth grew in John's chest, unfamiliar but not unwelcome. And behind him, Matt stayed in place for a long time, watching the red taillight disappear into the mist, unsure why the silence he stood in now felt less lonely than before. The diner felt different the next morning. Not quieter, not louder, just off. Matt felt it before he stepped through the door, a shift in the way air moved around people, the way heads turned then looked away a moment too late. The regulars were still there, scattered at booths, nursing coffee. But something buzzed beneath the surface, like the static hum before a storm. He tied his apron, tucked a pen in the strap, and went straight to work. Nothing had changed, technically, but it had. He noticed it first near the register. One of the younger guys from the kitchen was leaning against the counter, phone in hand, grinning like he'd won something. A few others gathered around, laughing low but sharp. They didn't call him over. They didn't need to. He knew that tone. By the time he passed them with a tray of plates, the words had started. "Didn't know you had a type," one of them muttered. "Is that what you do after shifts now?" said another louder. Matt didn't stop. He set the plates down, smiled at the family in the booth, walked back, but the laughter followed. When he turned the corner, he saw it. The phone held high, screen bright. A photo, blurry, taken from a distance, but clear enough to make out two people in the park. Matt and John, walking close, shoulders touching, heads turned toward each other. That was all it took. The guy holding the phone looked right at Matt. You get cozy with all the customers? Or just the scary ones? More laughter. Someone whistled. Someone else made a joke loud enough for customers to hear. And just like that, it spread. Not a scandal. Not even an incident. Just whispers, glances, the slow, creeping sting of being seen and judge for something unspoken. Matt's chest tightened. His hand gripped the edge of the counter until his knuckles burned. He said nothing. Not yet. Not here. But the moment didn't pass. The noise in the room began to shift. Tables turned. The volume rose, but not in conversation, in tension. He could feel it behind his back like heat. He had lived through worse. He had been ignored, insulted, forgotten. But being mocked for something real, something delicate, that was new. Then came the sound he didn't expect. A rumble. Low. Mechanical. Getting closer. Engines. Multiple. The entire front of the diner seemed to vibrate as 3 motorcycles pulled up out front. They parked in a line. Clean. Deliberate. Controlled. The door opened. And there he was. John. He walked in like he'd never left. Like he belonged here more than anyone else in the room. He didn't say a word. Behind him, 2 more men followed. Not loud, not posturing, just there, solid as the pavement outside. Conversations faltered. Phones dropped. No one laughed now. John's eyes scanned the room, stopping on Matt, then shifted to the kid with the phone, the one who had spoken the loudest. John walked toward him. Not fast, not slow, just steady. He stopped a few feet away. You think it's funny? The kid blinked. Try to smile. It's just a picture, man. Nothing serious. John's voice stayed even. Then why share it? No response. John stepped forward. You take photos of strangers for laughs? The kid looked around, but no one backed him up. He tried to scoff. Relax. No one's getting hurt. John's eyes didn't flinch. Not physically. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It pressed down on every corner of the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Matt didn't breathe. Then John turned. Not toward the staff. Toward him. He crossed the floor, stopped in front of Matt, and, without speaking, stood beside him. The message was clear. Simple. Final. No threats. No scenes. Just presence. The kind of presence that couldn't be laughed off. Matt didn't know what to do with the moment. The fear still buzzed in his veins, but something else rose to meet it. A calm he hadn't felt before. A certainty that this time, he wasn't alone. John placed a hand gently on the counter between them and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, he's not the one who should be embarrassed. That was all. He didn't name names. Didn't point fingers. He just said the truth, the kind that didn't need to shout. He nodded once, gave Matt a look that asked no questions and made no demands, then turned and walked toward the door. The other 2 followed. No one stopped them. The door swung closed. Silence hung for a second more. Then the diner breathed again, but differently. The tension hadn't left, but it had shifted direction. Matt exhaled quietly. He reached into his apron pocket, felt the folded napkin still there. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. The message had already been sent, and this time, he hadn't been the one to send it. The afternoon light stretched across the diner's windows, long and quiet. The tension from the morning had faded, but something else lingered in the air, the weight of what had changed. Matt moved through his shift like usual, though nothing felt usual anymore. The whispers had stopped, not because people had forgotten, but because someone had made it clear that mockery wouldn't go unchecked. That mattered more than he could say. He didn't see John return that day, but he felt it, the absence, the space left behind when someone chooses to stand beside you, then steps away again, not out of rejection, just reality. So, when the bell rang near closing time, Matt didn't expect anything, until the door opened and everything stopped again. It wasn't John. It was Sophia. She stood just inside the doorway, scanning the room with eyes that didn't hesitate. The conversations dipped, not into silence, but something just short of it. She walked toward the counter, slow and deliberate. Matt stayed where he was. She stopped a few feet from him. Is he here? Matt didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. Sophia exhaled, annoyed. Of course not. He's never where you expect him. She looked around again. Her voice lowered. I need to talk to him. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have left like that. Matt gave a slow nod, unsure if it was permission or just acknowledgement. He wasn't supposed to stay here, she added. He was supposed to follow me. Before Matt could respond, the door opened again. This time it was him. John walked in without hesitation, as if summoned by the very tension in the room. His gaze found Sophia instantly, then drifted to Matt, steady calm. Sophia turned sharply. There you are. John didn't answer. She stepped closer. I shouldn't have left like that. I was angry. You embarrassed me, but I was wrong. John stayed still, his expression unreadable. She tried again, her voice softer now. You and we've been through too much to let it fall apart over one disagreement. Let's just leave. Go back to what we had. Matt looked down, pretending to wipe a spot on the counter that wasn't there. He had no place in this. Until John spoke. I'm not going anywhere, he said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. Sophia blinked. What? John looked at her directly. You left because I defended someone. Not because I betrayed you, but because I asked you to show basic respect. Sophia's tone shifted. He means nothing. You barely know him. John shook his head. That's not true. He means something because he didn't look away. Because he didn't try to change me. Because when no one else said anything, he did. Sophia's voice rose again. You're choosing him? Over me? John didn't shout. Didn't explain himself again. He just nodded once. Yes. Silence dropped like a curtain. No gasps. No applause. Just truth. He turned to Matt, stepped closer. And for the first time, with people watching, he said, I'm not hiding this. Were you? Matt didn't move, but his chest tightened. Not in fear. In something stronger. Sophia took a step back. You'll regret this. John didn't look at her again. No, I won't. He reached out. Not for drama. Not for show. And placed a hand gently on Matt's shoulder. It wasn't a declaration. It was an anchor. They stood like that as Sophia turned and walked out, heels clicking fast now, her pride trying to keep pace with the sting. The door closed behind her. A few heads turned away. A few others didn't bother hiding their surprise. John didn't care. Neither did Matt. They didn't need anyone else's permission. Not anymore. The roar of the engine cut through the late afternoon air, steady and alive. The wind pushed against them as the road curved along the cliffs, the sea stretching out on one side, endless and calm. Matt sat behind John, his arms resting lightly around his waist, not out of fear or uncertainty, but trust. It wasn't about speed or escape. They weren't running. They were simply moving forward together. The town faded behind them. The noise, the looks, the judgment. They shrank into the distance with every mile. Ahead, the road remained open, the horizon soft and wide. Neither of them spoke, and they didn't need to. The rhythm of the wheels, the wind in their ears, the scent of salt from the ocean below, it all said enough. John had offered the ride without a speech, without expectation. Matt had accepted it the same way. He didn't ask where they were going. He didn't care. What mattered was the quiet space between them, filled with something steady, something new. He leaned into the curve of the bike as John took a bend, the sun catching the chrome for just a second before fading behind a cloud. They stopped at a coastal overlook, a patch of gravel above the rocks where the waves crashed below. The sky was beginning to shift, blue giving way to orange at the edges. John parked the bike, killed the engine, and climbed off. Matt followed, a little slower, brushing wind from his hair. They stood side by side, not touching, not talking, just watching the water breathe. Matt finally broke the silence. Why here? John shrugged lightly. It's where I go when I need to feel small in a good way. Matt nodded, understanding that more than he expected to. There were no fences, no signs. Just ocean, sky, and space. You didn't have to come back to that diner, Matt said, his voice low. Not after everything. I did, John answered. Because you stayed standing. Matt looked down. Sometimes I wish I hadn't. Then they'd have won, John said. They don't get to decide who you are. A pause passed between them, heavier than words. I spent years being a label, John continued. A threat. A problem. No one ever asked who I really was. They just made their own version and stuck to it. Matt swallowed. I know that feeling. I saw you, John said. Not what people say about you. You. The words were simple, but they landed with weight. Matt turned toward him. Then I'm glad you forgot your lighter. John gave a short, quiet laugh. I didn't. Matt blinked. What? I left it on purpose, John said. I needed a reason to come back. Didn't think I'd need more than a day. Matt shook his head slowly, half smiling. You're worse at subtlety than I thought. I'm not good at a lot of things, John replied. But I meant what I said. I'm not hiding. Matt stepped closer. He didn't need to say thank you. Not for this. Instead, he reached for John's hand just for a moment. The touch wasn't dramatic. It wasn't romantic. It was real. The waves kept crashing below. The sun dipped lower. Matt looked at the road that curved beyond the overlook. Do you always ride without a plan? Only when it matters, John said. Want to come with me a little further? Matt nodded. Yeah, I do. They returned to the bike. No speech. No fanfare. Just movement. John kicked the engine back to life. Matt climbed on behind him, hands steady this time. The machine rumbled beneath them as they pulled back onto the highway. They didn't look back. The road didn't ask questions. The sky didn't care about rumors. The ocean didn't need explanations. And for the first time in a long time, neither did they. They weren't defining anything. Not now. Not yet. But in a world that loved to label and dismiss, two people choosing each other, quietly, completely, was already more than enough. Sometimes one person believing in you changes everything. Sometimes that's all it takes to begin again. Together, they followed the road until the sun dipped low and the lights from the town behind them disappeared for good.